The standard for Roman soldiers was to attack with the right hand and use the shield with the left. That raises the question, were there left-handed legionaries in the Roman army? And what happened to a soldier who naturally used his left hand? Was that an advantage or a disadvantage on the battlefield? To answer this, we first need to understand how a left-handed soldier would affect the organization of a Roman legion. A left-handed soldier would have a significant impact on the structure and effectiveness of a Roman legion, especially in military formations. In a traditional formation, each legionary had a specific role. The shield was used to protect the left side of the soldier while he held the gladius with his right hand. This arrangement allowed soldiers to protect each other, with their shields forming a strong line of defense while at the same time staying ready to attack with their swords efficiently positioned. The idea was that by fighting together, soldiers would create a nearly impenetrable system of defense and attack. Since each soldier had his shield on the left and sword on the right, formations were designed to stay compact and coordinated, with overlapping shields protecting vulnerable body parts. If a left-handed soldier were placed in the formation, the symmetry that ensured effective defense and attack would be disrupted. This imbalance would create a weak spot in the formation. Instead of shields overlapping uniformly, to cover gaps, a left-handed soldier's shield would be on the wrong side. That shield overlap would reduce their offensive capacity, since the left-hander's sword, which should be in the right hand, would be reversed. This would create a gap in the defensive line and could compromise the effectiveness of the formation, since the strategy relied on every soldier being in the precise position to defend and attack simultaneously. So clearly, a soldier who could only fight with his left hand would not be accepted into a legion. The Roman writer Vegetius mentioned how even small faults could impact the Roman army's effectiveness. He wrote each man having 3 feet. We observed earlier that the distance between each rank should be 6 feet, 1 foot of which is occupied by the men. In this passage, Vegetius details the spacing required between soldiers to ensure the efficiency of the military formation. He notes that each soldier had about 3 feet of personal space, allowing them to move freely within the formation without bumping into or blocking each other. The reason for this precise arrangement was that beyond the need for mutual protection, the space also allowed them to maneuver their swords without disrupting the formation. Maintaining the correct distance was essential for keeping the battle line strong and tight without vulnerable openings. In another quote, Vegetius wrote, "No part of training is more essential in action than the soldiers keeping their ranks with the greatest exactness, neither too open nor too close. Troops that are too crowded can never fight properly and only get in each other's way." Here, Vegetius explains that if the ranks are too open or too tight, it causes disorganization, weakening defense and making offensive movements more difficult. Thus, each Roman soldier holding his shield in the left hand and sword in the right was following the established standard for military formation. But does that mean there were no left-handed soldiers in the legion? Not necessarily. Although a left-hander posed difficulties in formation, that didn't mean he was automatically excluded or unfit for service. It's possible that left-handed soldiers, during their training as recruits, were gradually taught to overcome that challenge. This kind of training is actually common even today. We see examples of left-handed people being trained to use their right hand in many situations. For example, many left-handers are forced to use their right hand from a young age, especially for activities like sports, writing, or even using utensils. A clear example of this can be seen in sports like tennis and basketball. Many left-handed athletes train to use their right hand to gain tactical flexibility and become more unpredictable to their opponents. In basketball, for example, a left-handed player might train to dribble, pass, and even shoot with the right hand, making him more versatile and harder to defend. So, in a Roman legion, the goal of training would be to adapt the soldier to use his right hand so that he could perform like his right-handed peers without compromising the formation's effectiveness. That wouldn't mean losing the natural ability to use the left hand, but rather gaining the skill to use both hands efficiently through constant practice and adaptation. A left-handed soldier would have to train within the military formation, where coordination with fellow soldiers was crucial. He would need to learn to move precisely, maintaining the symmetry and effectiveness of formation where all the shields overlapped in an organized manner. Even so, a left-handed soldier could have a great advantage in individual combat. Why? Think about it. Apparently, from ancient times to today, about 90% of people are right-handed and only 10% are left-handed. Left-handed warriors, being fewer in number, were used to fighting mostly against right-handers. That experience made them more adapted to facing right-handed opponents, since they were familiar with their movements and typical attack angles. But the opposite wasn't true. Right-handed fighters weren't used to battling left-handers. Since most combatants were right-handed, they trained to fight others like themselves and weren't prepared for the different techniques and angles used by left-handers. A left-hander fights in a mirrored way, compared to a right-hander, which creates surprise factor. A left-hander's attacks, coming from different directions and angles, can be harder to block since right-handers aren't trained to deal with those kinds of movements. Because of this, left-handed Roman gladiators were considered extremely valuable and much harder to defeat in combat. But how did the Romans treat someone who was left-handed? Even today, in many cultures, left-handed children are punished and forced to use the right hand for everyday tasks like writing, eating, or playing. In ancient Rome, being left-handed wasn't seen in a positive light either. The left hand was associated with negative meanings, and left-handers were often viewed with scorn or even superstition. This was already clear in the word Romans, used for someone left-handed. The Latin word sinister, which originally just meant left, eventually became associated with meanings like evil, unfavorable, or unlucky. The connection between the left side and misfortune or impurity was very strong. For example, in the context of religious rituals and augury, a bad omen was often identified with events occurring on the left. If a bird appeared on the left side, it was seen as a sign of bad luck. Using the left hand wasn't just seen as unusual. It was also linked to evil or even betrayal. Since most people were right-handed, using the left hand for daily activities was often viewed as something unnatural. Although there are no historical records indicating that left-handers were directly excluded or punished for being left-handed, they were generally associated with negative traits. For instance, in a religious context, if a left-hander performed a ritual act, they could be seen as bringing negative energy to the ceremony because of the symbolic link between the left side and bad omens. Now, I'm curious to know, are you one of the 10% who are left-handed? Do you think being a left-handed Roman soldier would have brought more advantages or disadvantages? Tell us in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.